Hello and welcome to this presentation on supporting Year 11 revision. My name is Mr Milne and I'm the head of Year 11, and over the next few minutes I'm going to be speaking to you about the importance of revision and how best to support your child with it. I would like to start by discussing where we are now. At the end of Year 10, the year group received their very final progress review of the year, their final reports. And in those final reports, it indicated to us that the average progress score for the year group was 0.28. 0.28 is an above average progress score, the average in the country being 0. And this showed that students had made really good progress throughout the year. Obviously in Year 11, students have just had their very first progress reports. And these indicate to us that again, that progress score has increased slightly from 0.28 to 0.30, showing us that students continue to make positive progress as they progress through the year. We have about 110 teaching days remaining, and that's really critical because it means that we need to make sure every single one of those days counts and that students are putting in as much effort as they can. I'd like to really frame this presentation around the quote here from Arnold Palmer, one of the greatest golfers of all time. Arnold Palmer said, "The more I practice, the luckier I get." And with revision, that really is the key. In order to aid revision, lots of information is available to parents and students. Curriculum plans and exam board information for every subject is on the Academy website under the Curriculum tab. And mock exam revision information has been sent out to parents via email. Students have also had a hard copy in the Academy, and there also exists a copy on the Academy website. This is coupled with the mock exam timetable, which students have been shown, and which is really important for framing their revision so they know which exams will be coming up when in the November mock series. The Year 11 mock exams in November are really serving two main purposes. The first, to prepare students for the real exam by familiarising them with the exam processes, sitting in the exam hall, working in silence with invigilators. The second is to provide real-time constructive feedback to them. There is no better feedback than an exam sat in exam conditions. And this gives students an opportunity to reflect on their learning, target revision for the future and improve. But the important thing to remember about a mock exam is that it is exactly that, a mock exam. It's designed to prepare students and it's designed as a teaching tool. And it's important that students go into these exams fully prepared and fully understanding that they should use these for the feedback that they're going to provide. In order to support students with their ongoing revision, the Academy continues to offer the Period 6 sessions. These are on Monday, Wednesdays and Thursdays and provide an opportunity for students to work with subject specialists on exam content and technique. These will continue during the week-long mock exam preparation period. However, they will be paused during the 2 weeks of mock exams in order to give students an opportunity to target their revision more specifically. As well as supporting students with their revision, it's important that we support them with their own mental health and well-being. Students at Longsands Academy are very much more than just an exam number. We value each student individually for their own merits and strengths, and it's important that students feel supported during this incredibly busy time, especially considering the disruption they've faced to their learning over the past 2 years. Should your young person require the support of a member of staff, please do let them know that their first port of call is their form tutor. Their form tutor is somebody who they see every single day and who is on hand to provide that immediate support to them. Should they wish to, they can also come and speak to the pastoral team. That's myself as their head of year, and also our student support officers who are on hand to support students every single day. We also have around the Academy a series of anonymous drop boxes, our Tell Us boxes. We also have a Tell Us email address where students can ask for support if they don't feel comfortable speaking to an adult directly. It's also important that students take time to be with their friends and their parents and speak with their friends and their parents. We would encourage students to be open with their friends and family at all times so that everybody can support everybody. We encourage students to take part in hobbies and extracurricular activities such as sports and exercise so that students have a very well-rounded and balanced healthy lifestyle. Mental health and well-being support is really key to ensuring that students are happy and comfortable whilst at school. It's important to consider why revision is important, and the first and most obvious answer is that it helps us to remember things. Students have been told that revision is essential for helping with exam success, and that really is the truth. Every single day, our brain creates neuron connections. Neural pathways are laid down between neurons, and it's the strength of these connections that leads to something existing in our long-term memory. There are certain things that we can remember because there are stronger connections in our brain. Every night when we go to sleep, enzymes are released in our brain that destroy the least secure connections. So in order to remember something in the long term, it's important that we strengthen and reinforce those connections in our brain through repetition. And if we look at the graph on the right-hand side, what we see is that with continued revision and by spaced repetition, those neural pathways get stronger and that information is stored in our long-term memory. Having this information stored in our long-term memory leads to increased confidence and reduced anxiety. Academic confidence is key for students for exam success, and that reduction in anxiety helps students to remain calm and focused when they're studying and when they're in the exam, because reducing stress is key to unlocking that long-term memory that students need in order to be successful in their exams. And that brings me on to a really important question. Students will often, when they first start to revise, they think, yes, it's really important that I have these long-term connections. It's important that I study, so I'm going to sit down and study for a long period of time. But my question is, how long can the average student actually effectively be learning from what they're reading or studying in front of them without a break? And common answers to this question among students that I've taught over the years range from 5 minutes to 4 hours, but the actual answer is about 25 to 30 minutes. After about 25 to 30 minutes, students need a break. But unless students take that break, their time actually becomes far less efficient. And we could plot that on a graph, efficient studying on the one axis and time on the other. And let's say we have a student that starts studying at 6 p.m. and they want to do 3 hours of revision. And this graph is fairly typical of what we would expect the average student to do. After about 25 minutes, we see a drop-off in efficiency, and that drop-off continues right the way through to about 9 p.m. We've all suffered this. Roughly 20 to 25 minutes into a presentation or into an activity, we start to get bored, we pull out our phone, we start to scroll through social media, we start to find distractions. And this is true of studying, but if we have a student that sat down and said, I want to do 3 hours, and they force themselves to stay sat there without a break, their efficiency declines and declines and declines. And what we see is this drop-off continues, and by the end, by 9 o'clock, they're doing no work, they are bored, they are struggling, they're sitting there thinking to themselves, I can't revise, I don't know what I'm doing, nothing's going in, I'm reading it but it's not working, and their efficiency has completely dropped. And so the student actually in that 3-hour block spends about 25 to 30 minutes studying, despite being sat at their desk for a good 3 hours. And this therefore is ineffective. It's not helpful. It's not going to set up that long-term memory that students need. And what we see is if students continue with this approach, their efficiency actually drops from 20 to 25 minutes to 15 to 10 to 5 until eventually what happens is they're beaten before they've even started. And students sit there thinking, I can't revise, I don't know what I'm doing, there's no point. And we need to avoid getting to this point. And that leads me on to my very first rule. The moment that students start to slide, they need to take a break. They need to have 5 minutes to recharge. They need to take a walk, speak to a sibling or a friend. They need to do something that's rewarding, something that's making them happy. And that's the thing, 5 minutes is actually all it takes to recharge for another 25 to 30 minutes of revision. And taking that 5-minute break is essential. And they must stand up, they must come away from their revision space, and they must do something that they find rewarding, whatever that may be to them. And what we see then on our graph is actually as opposed to dropping off every time they start to slide. If that student takes a break of about 5 minutes, their efficiency is nearly recharged back to the very top of where it was before, and they can go again for another 25 to 30 minutes. And then they take a 5-minute break and they do something rewarding and they can go again and again. And actually, in this example, the student ends up revising for nearly 2.5 out of the 3 hours, apart from the time that they've taken for their breaks. And it keeps their efficiency high, it keeps their focus high, and it supports them to make best use of their time. Of course, when we get to the end, it's tempting to put away the book or the revision cards and just go off to bed or go off to the next activity. But actually, it's important that students have a big reward at the end of a study session. Psychologists have long said that the things that we reward ourselves for are the things that we often come back and do time and time again. So it might be that that person then has some time on the Xbox, or they watch a film, or they read a book, or they go for a walk or a run, but they do something that's really rewarding at the end of a study session, a big reward. And that big reward, again, is because they've sat down and they've spent some time working. Doing this and splitting this time in this way will ensure that students have the most efficient and maximised revision time possible. 20 to 25 minutes of study, followed by a 5-minute break, followed by another 20 to 25 minutes of study, repeating for however long they've planned their revision that day. That is the best way to revise, according to leading psychologists in America. And my top tips for revision are really key. I have communicated these to students this year already, but they are to start early. The earlier students start revision, the longer they've got to revise, the longer they've got to make those neural connections, the longer they've got to embed that knowledge. I always advise students to create a revision timetable, because a revision timetable allows them to plan out their revision for the week, and it allows them to see what they're going to do and when, as opposed to just picking a topic on a whim. Doing this ensures that students avoid just going over the things they already know, because it's easy to revise the things that we already know. I always recommend a little and often when it comes to revision, about sort of 3 periods of 20 minutes and 3 5-minute breaks is what I would recommend. Sitting there and trying to do sort of 2, 3, 4 hours is inefficient and oftentimes unhelpful, because it's quite a daunting period of time. Better to do 3 periods of 20 minutes and 3 5-minute breaks in a day, because students can then look at that in a much more manageable way. And lastly, it's important that students find the techniques that work for them. I'm going to go through in a minute my top 5 revision tips, but it's important that students find the techniques that work for them. So my top 5 revision tips. Firstly, flashcards. Flashcards can be analog, or they can be via an app, and these are incredibly portable. Students can write a question on one side, the answer on another, and they can use these to revise the content and the exam technique. Flashcards are a tried and tested method of revision. My second strategy is mind mapping and timelines. These are excellent for whole course overviews, and it's really important that students start with the basics, the bare bones, and then they can add in more and more detail as they go through and revise. These mind maps and timelines, they can be placed anywhere sort of around the house for quick reference, a bedroom wall or the back of a door, somewhere where they're going to be seen regularly, and students can then look at those as they're walking past, and it's just that ongoing intermittent revision. My third strategy is using past papers. Past papers are often thought of as the best way to revise. However, they can be sometimes thought of as a bit of a silver bullet, and they're not. It's important to remember that past papers and exam papers are written for the end of the course, when students have studied the whole course and revised. So they must be sort of used in conjunction with other strategies. You can go through whole past papers that can be found on specification websites, or you can go through practice questions that teachers have often set. Both of these are really useful, and it's important that students go through these with their notes, but also in exam conditions and under time limits, and do both. Perhaps start off with their notes and their books open, and then try a couple of exam questions in time limits and under exam conditions when they're feeling more confident. Students should use past papers as an opportunity to highlight areas to target future revision, perhaps the question that they struggled with, the question type, or the content of a question that they found particularly challenging. My fourth strategy is teaching an adult. Teaching forces us to consider information in new ways. It forces us to try and come up with the information in the simplest form in our mind. And so if you sit down with your child, your young person, and you ask them to explain a concept or an idea or a system to you, oftentimes it's going to force them to think about it in a new way, and it's going to force them to revise it in their own mind before they try and explain it to you. If they struggle to do something, go back through their notes or the revision guide with them, do this together, sit down and ensure that they teach you what they're trying to teach you. Ensure that they make sure that they learn it and then teach it to you. This is a really useful way of processing information. My last revision strategy is GCSE Pod. It's such a fantastic tool and it's something we really advocate at Long Sands. It's incredibly portable and it's a really knowledge-rich environment. There are lots of 5-minute videos on a variety of topics and subjects. Students can create playlists of things to watch and revise from, and the best thing about it is it can be used in a real variety of ways. It's possible to use GCSE Pods at home, sitting and watching them, adding to notes that they've made in class, or listening on the go, taking notes, quizzing, working collaboratively with other students. It's a really, really rich and invaluable tool and something I wholeheartedly recommend. Overall then, I just want to go back to where we started. There are 110 teaching days remaining, and each of those is incredibly critical. And I want to thank you for the time and effort that you're putting in to support your child with their revision at Long Sands. Like I said at the very beginning, that quote, the more I practice, the luckier I get. And that really is key for understanding the importance of revision. Our mock exam preparation week at Long Sands is from the 1st to the 5th of November. And the Year 11 mock exams run from the 8th to the 19th of November. If you have any questions regarding any of this, please do not hesitate to contact me. My email address is on screen now. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.